Syndicate of terror will not end with the death of bin Laden.
At the White House, Danielle Nottingham, 10 News.
News of bin Laden's death has been met with near hysteria across the United States. Americans believe bin Laden got what he deserved.
The White House statement came late at night. America's best-kept secret revealed by a president who fully understood this was a moment of high emotion for a nation still wounded by the attacks of 9/11.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda, and a terrorist who's responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent men, women, and children.
Good morning. Osama bin Laden is dead.
Across America, this is being treated as news of huge significance, a turning point in the war.
Justice has been done.
It was news that brought people flooding out onto the streets. America's greatest enemy had been killed. And in the eyes of most people here, justice belatedly had been delivered. Robert Moore, 10 News.
But India says bin Laden's discovery in Pakistan is a serious blow to that country's credibility.
If proof were needed of the significance of Osama bin Laden's death, you only had to glance at the world's news channels. As information-filled bulletins, worldwide reactions centred on congratulating the U.S. for its dogged and daring capture.
This operation shows no matter how difficult it is, how long it takes, however much the perpetrator of violence tries to hide, if you, by acts of terror, kill innocent civilians, we will find you and we will bring you to justice.
The world will become a better world without him. Doesn't mean this is the end of all terrorism.
As they learnt the news in cafes across Afghanistan, the country's president warned Taliban members to learn from this moment. It does, he said, prove Afghanistan was right, that terrorism is not in the villages of this country, but in the safe havens.
Well, Australian leaders have also welcomed the news. Both leaders agree it doesn't change our commitment in Afghanistan.
She said the fight definitely isn't over, Al-Qaeda isn't finished, and that our troops must remain in Afghanistan. She also said that they need to remain there to make sure that Australia does not become, Afghanistan doesn't become a safe haven for terrorists in the future. The opposition says it's not only a symbolic victory, but also a strategic one for the United States. However, Bob Brown believes the death is even more reason to bring Australian troops back from Afghanistan.
We continue to be engaged in Afghanistan so that that country does not again become a haven for terrorists.
We shouldn't underestimate the ability of Al-Qaeda to strike back, and we should not relax our guard.
Kevin Rudd has congratulated the US for the secret military operation that killed bin Laden. Mr. Rudd met with US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in Washington this morning. He described the terrorist death as an historic moment. The Foreign Minister also reaffirmed Australia's commitment to keep troops in Afghanistan until 2014. Mrs. Clinton used the opportunity to thank America's world partners for their roles in tracking down the world's most wanted man.
The world is safer. It is a better place because of the death of Osama bin Laden. The world is safer. It is a better place because of the death of Osama bin Laden. The world is safer. It is a better place because of the death of Osama bin Laden.
Former Prime Minister John Howard was in Washington, D.C. when the hijacked planes came down on September 11, and it was he who pledged Australian assistance in the war in Afghanistan. And it was he who pledged Australian assistance in the war in Afghanistan. And it was he who pledged Australian assistance in the war in Afghanistan.
Well, I was delighted, and I felt for the Americans, they were entitled to feel jubilant. It's been a long struggle, and psychologically it gave them a sense of justice.
Mr. Howard says bin Laden's death should strengthen our resolve in Afghanistan rather than signal an end to military commitment there. And the Australian dollar, very strong, right now worth 109.3 US cents.
Yes, indeed, Georgie, although I think the newspaper said it all this morning here. The New York Post, Rupert Murdoch's paper, got him vengeance at last, US nails the bastard. Well, that was what the newspaper's saying, and certainly there was all that excitement going on last night. And yes, they are expecting some sort of retaliation as well. That was always on the card. So it's one of those things, you know, they knew that when they got Obama there would be a reaction, and now sadly we wait to see what that is.
Sort of reception you got after the Logies, wasn't it, Carlos? That was just from the boys.
Is my daughter Ava, going to scream like that in her teens?
I think they all do when they're hormonally charged at that age. Yeah. When they're hormonally charged at that age. Yeah. When they're hormonally charged at that age. Yeah.
MC Hammer. No?
Was that a screaming one? That wasn't really.
Yeah.
Those pants would make you scream.
The Running Man. Could you do the Running Man, Benny?
No.
You couldn't do the Running Man?
No.
Oh, come on. No. Everyone could do the Running Man.
No.
We'll do the
have to show us.
I'll do the Running Man a bit later.
Carl will do it.
Happily.
After 8 o'clock. It's all happening.
When 9/11 happened, what was your first response yesterday when you heard the news?
Well, I was delighted, and I felt for the Americans, they were entitled to feel jubilant. It's been a long struggle, and psychologically it gave them a sense of justice.
With the healing process?
I don't really know. I don't know, to be honest. It's just part of it all. And,
do you perhaps feel a little guilty about loving the fact somebody who was so cruel actually has died?
Yeah, I actually did go through that.
Killed.
Because, I mean, I don't believe in the death penalty. I don't believe in that kind of vengeance. I'm not a religious person, but I believe in what I believe in. And I've tried to remain fairly true to myself. And but I must admit there was a little bit of me that you know, I don't want to say I felt good about it, but and yeah, there was some guilt. I thought, you know, this isn't me. This isn't how I feel. This isn't how I think. But you know, as my wife pointed out, she goes, "You are human," and I went, we are humans. We are animals. And
how has it affected your life?
Well, it becomes part of your life. It becomes something that you have to integrate into your life. It's not something that it's just that event like it is for everyone else, and they can look back at it as a history moment. For us, it becomes part of us, and there are plenty of things that come up that remind us, and things that we have to do, you know, to maintain our lives. So it's been difficult. I mean, one of the most important things I think I did at the time was and as ironic as it is for me to say this on television, is to maintain privacy. And I think it's important for the family members involved in something like this to have the right to the privacy that they want, because you can't grieve with everyone looking over your shoulder.
Have you been back to New York?
Washington?
Oh, Washington, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've been back a few times. I've been a few times, and I'll be there at the end of the year. Sometimes going over on official 9/11 business, for want of a better word. We're going this year.
How did that make you feel then?
Oh, look, it wasn't a nice feeling then, because I wasn't a big supporter of George Bush. I didn't like the way he was, you know, taking this event that took our mum and turned it into a reason to go into Iraq. So I was never a supporter of him, and I didn't believe in that, and I felt kind of used in that way.
But what should have happened in your view then? How should America have reacted?
Look, I think Afghanistan was definitely part of the plan. I think that was you know, a war that had somewhat of relevance to it. There was a reason for that. But I think you know, I think politically, you know, it was used in a lot of ways, and that was a hard thing to deal with when you felt you were part of that machine. I think you know, I think politically, you know, it was used in a lot of ways, and that was a hard thing to deal with when you felt you were part of that machine. I think you know, I think politically, you know, it was used in a lot of ways, and that was a hard thing to deal with when you felt you were part of that machine.
Is this going to stop terrorism?
Oh, no, of course not. Absolutely not.
Brutality.
I mean, if you could take two trains of thought, there are people that say it's probably going to make things worse. I don't know. Only time will tell. I think the only thing that can really quell these sort of extremist acts is, I guess, for people to not be marginalised. I'm against Muslims being marginalised in our society. I think it's the wrong thing to do.
Simon Kennedy joining us, his mother, Yvonne, he lost in those terrorist attacks in America. And I guess this is one of the questions with Osama bin Laden and his death, the result of a firefight with armed forces. All those details are now coming out. It followed that a top secret operation, this began August last year. Suspicions were raised about this mansion in Pakistan with really heavy security. And then finally, President Obama ordered the attack on that compound and, of course, ended fatally for the world's most wanted man. And it is one of those defining moments, historical defining moments that you always remember where and when you heard the news. Now,
amazingly tense, really not knowing what the outcome was going to be. But of course, as we know now, Osama bin Laden no longer with us, his body dumped at sea.
Certainly in conjunction with Muslim faith too, which is interesting in itself. And there would be people that argue, well, hang on a second, in September 11 I didn't get the chance to bury my son or daughter or husband, and in this case they have done that obviously to appease the Muslim faith, which is probably a very, very smart call. A lot of things, a lot of balls in the air, a lot of juggling went on, high risk stuff. And
amazingly tense, really not knowing what the outcome was going to be. But of course, as we know now, Osama bin Laden no longer with us, his body dumped at sea.
Certainly in conjunction with Muslim faith too, which is interesting in itself. And there would be people that argue, well, hang on a second, in September 11 I didn't get the chance to bury my son or daughter or husband, and in this case they have done that obviously to appease the Muslim faith, which is probably a very, very smart call. A lot of things, a lot of balls in the air, a lot of juggling went on, high risk stuff. And
former Prime Minister John Howard says the death of bin Laden should not signal the end of Australia's military commitment in Afghanistan. It's a view also held by Foreign Minister Kevin Rudd, who spoke from Washington, D.C.
We will stay the course in Afghanistan until our mission is complete. And we've defined what that mission is in relation to the province of Oregon, which our defence forces are by and large committed, together with our American allies. So we believe that we have the right timetable to do it. We respect President Karzai's 2014 date, and we are well on track towards achieving that. And we see no change as a result of the events of the last 24 hours.
And the Australian dollar is mixed against the major currencies and right now fetching 109 US cents.